I want to be honest with you, Elle was not looking for a serious relationship. My beloved child. I want to be honest with you, because honesty has a strange way of hitting harder when it comes quietly. I was never searching for a serious relationship, not the kind that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. wondering why a single memory can shake your entire chest. I wanted something light, something that wouldn't demand my heart's bandwidth. But then you arrived like a silent disruption, one of those rare arrivals that feel accidental yet impossibly intentional. Even now, as I speak these words, I can feel that same tremor in my voice, the one I tried to hide when I first realized you were no ordinary moment in my life. And maybe that's what makes this truth so unsettling. From the very beginning, I could sense that you held the power to rearrange the architecture of every belief I carried. I told myself it was temporary, a small chapter, but chapters don't stare back at you with the force of a destiny you never asked for. And that's when the fear began, not fear of losing you, but fear of how deeply I was already falling without even realizing it. Yet as days blurred into nights and nights into confessions I never thought I'd make, you became more than just a person. I won't say what exactly, because some truths only reveal themselves when they've finished rewriting you. What I can tell you is this: every time you laughed, the world felt like it paused to listen. Every time you walked away, every second without you stretched like a storm waiting to snap. And before I knew it, the walls I used to hide behind weren't just cracking, they were collapsing under the weight of a feeling I never believed I could hold. You turned my excuses into reflections, my distance into desire, my silence into a strange kind of prayer. And the wildest part? I wasn't ready. Not for the intensity, not for the vulnerability, and definitely not for the moment I first understood that losing you would hurt far more than admitting how much I needed you. That realization hit like a revelation people wait their whole lives to experience, sudden, undeniable, and impossible to escape. But listen carefully now, because this is the part where everything changes. You think you know where this story is heading, but you don't, not even close. There's something I haven't said yet, something I've kept buried under the layers of "I'm fine" and "it's nothing." You see, the reason I wasn't looking for a serious relationship wasn't because I didn't want one, it was because I didn't believe I deserved one. I wasn't avoiding love, I was avoiding myself. I was terrified that if someone looked too closely, they'd see the fractures I've spent years trying to glue together. But you, without even trying, saw every piece of me. The broken parts. The hopeful parts. The parts one never thought could feel anything again. And instead of stepping back, you stepped closer, as if you sensed something extraordinary waiting beneath the surface. That's when I realized the real shock, the real twist, the real once-in-a-lifetime revelation. You weren't just someone I met, you were the moment my life shifted from just surviving to finally waking up. And now, as we stand on the edge of what happens next, I need you to hold on, because the truth I'm about to reveal in the next part will not just change the story, it will redefine it entirely. My beloved child, before I take you any deeper, I need you to breathe, slow, steady, like you're preparing for something that could change the way your heart interprets every truth you've ever heard. Because what happened next wasn't normal, wasn't predictable, wasn't anything a person prepares for. It was the kind of twist life throws only once, the kind that forces you to confront what you've been running from. After admitting to myself that you were becoming something I never intended to search for, I expected distance to save me. But instead, the universe did the opposite. It began placing you everywhere, your voice in places I didn't expect, your presence in moments that should have belonged to silence, your echoes showing up like a reminder I could no longer outrun. And with every passing hour, the truth I'd buried began rising like a tide that refused to retreat. It wasn't just attraction, it wasn't just connection, it was a pull, a gravitational force that felt ancient, familiar, almost cosmic. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure if I was afraid, or if I was finally waking up to the possibility of something extraordinary. But here's where the ground really began to shift, because the deeper I fell, the more I realized that what scared me wasn't losing control, it was losing you before I even had the courage to hold on. Every conversation we shared carried this quiet electricity, almost like the universe was whispering, "Pay attention, this is the moment everything changes." You ever feel that? That strange sense that someone was meant to appear exactly when they did? That if they had arrived even a week earlier or later, you would have missed each other entirely? That's what you became for me, a perfect collision disguised as coincidence. You made me confront the truth I kept hidden under smiles that didn't reach my eyes. You made me see that the love I avoided wasn't because I didn't want it, but because I didn't believe anyone would stay once they saw the full chaos I carried. And still, somehow, you stayed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just, consistently. And that quiet consistency became the loudest evidence that maybe, just maybe, what was unfolding between us wasn't an accident, it was alignment. Yet the real revelation came the night I realized something I hadn't dared to speak aloud. It hit me with the force of a confession I could no longer suppress. What if the reason you appeared wasn't to challenge me, but to prepare me? Prepare me for a truth that would shake the foundation of everything I believed about love, about timing, about destiny. Because as much as I tried to convince myself that this was temporary, the universe kept pushing back, whispering a message I wasn't ready to hear. And now, as we stand on this cliff edge of truth, I can feel the next part rising inside me, urgent and unstoppable. What I'm about to reveal next isn't just emotional, it's the kind of truth that rewrites entire stories. Stay with me, because the next part isn't just important, it's the moment everything you thought you understood flips upside down. My beloved child, before I take another step into this truth, I need you to understand something that I never allowed myself to admit, not to others, not to myself, not even in the silence of my own thoughts. Every moment with you felt like standing in front of a door I never had the courage to open. A door that led to a version of me I didn't believe deserved to exist. But the strange part? You didn't push me to open it, you simply stood beside me, quietly, patiently, as if you already knew what waited on the other side. And that patience, your patience, became the most disarming thing I've ever experienced. Because people usually rush, judge, or assume. But you didn't. You watched me unravel with a kind of gentleness that scared me more than any heartbreak ever could. And that's when I realized something that felt almost impossible to accept. Maybe the universe wasn't testing me, maybe it was finally trusting me. Trusting me enough to place someone in my life who could see the storms inside me and not run. But the real turning point wasn't a dramatic confession or a cinematic emotional breakdown. It was something much quieter, almost too quiet to notice unless you were paying attention. It happened in an ordinary moment, the kind we overlook because it doesn't come with fireworks or background music. I was talking to you, half distracted, half guarded, like always, when suddenly, in the middle of a sentence, my mind paused. Paused the way it does when something inside you shifts without permission. And it hit me, this terrifying, breathtaking understanding that you weren't just someone I liked being around. You were the first person in a long time who made me feel safe. Not safe in the sense of comfort or familiarity, but safe in the rare way that makes you want to lower your defenses, reveal the shadows you hide, and still believe you won't be abandoned. That kind of safety is dangerous. Rare. A once-in-a-lifetime phenomenon. And that's when the fear returned, not because I doubted you, but because I finally recognized the magnitude of what you meant. I wasn't falling anymore. I had already fallen, quietly and completely, without realizing it. But now comes the part you've been waiting for, the revelation that ties everything together. The reason I said I wasn't looking for a serious relationship wasn't just because of fear, or insecurity, or past wounds I never healed. It was because, deep down, I sensed something I couldn't explain. A feeling that the next person who would enter my life would change everything in ways I wasn't ready for. A shift so powerful it would blur the lines between coincidence and destiny. And when you appeared, that feeling intensified until it became impossible to ignore. You weren't a distraction. You weren't a temporary chapter. You were the moment everything began making sense. My mistakes, my heartbreaks, my delays, my detours, all of it. It all existed so I could recognize the gravity of what I felt for you. And now, as we move into what comes next, you need to prepare yourself, because the truth waiting in the next part isn't just another emotional twist. It's the revelation that will finally expose why the universe pushed us toward each other with such force, and why it refuses to let this connection fade. My beloved child, before I open this final layer, steady your heart, because what comes next isn't a soft truth, it's the kind that hits like a revelation you can feel in your bones. After everything I've confessed, everything I've tried to run from, I finally understood the real reason I kept my distance. It wasn't fear of love itself, it was fear of what loving you would demand of me. Because loving you meant changing the version of myself I had spent years protecting. It meant becoming someone honest, vulnerable, someone who could no longer hide behind the excuse of, I wasn't looking for anything serious. With you, seriousness didn't feel like pressure, it felt like purpose. And that realization shook me so deeply that for a moment, I thought stepping back would somehow protect both of us. But life has a strange way of exposing your truth even when you're determined to bury it. And my truth was you. It had always been you. But the universe wasn't done testing me. Just when I thought I had reached the limit of what my heart could understand, something happened that forced me to face the entire truth all at once. It wasn't a dramatic fight or a heartbreaking moment of silence, it was something far more subtle, far more dangerous. I caught myself imagining a life where you weren't temporary. A life where I stopped pretending, stopped holding back, stopped hiding behind the illusion of detachment. And the vision, unexpected, uninvited, undeniable, hit with the force of destiny whispering into my ear. I saw moments with you I never allowed myself to dream about. I saw versions of myself I never believed I could become. And the scariest part? It didn't feel impossible. It felt like something that had been waiting quietly in the background, waiting for the moment I finally admitted the truth I kept locked inside. You didn't just change my life, you revealed the life I was meant to live. And once that truth surfaced, there was no going back, no pretending, no hiding behind excuses. And now, here we stand, at the edge of everything unsaid, everything feared, everything destined. So here is the twist you've been waiting for, the revelation that ties every second together. I wasn't looking for a serious relationship because I thought love would slow me down. But you made me realize that the right person doesn't slow you down, they shift your entire direction. They become the turning point, the plot twist, the unexpected chapter that becomes the whole story. You weren't a distraction. You weren't a coincidence. You weren't an accident. You were the moment everything in my life aligned. And now, as this part ends, there's only one truth left, one that will redefine everything you thought you understood. In the next part, I will reveal the reason the universe kept pushing you toward me, and why no matter how much I tried to resist, our story was never meant to be small. My beloved child, before I reveal what the universe has been trying to tell me from the very beginning, I need you to listen with the kind of stillness that only arrives when a truth is finally ready to speak. Everything I've run from, everything I've denied, everything I've buried under layers of logic and fear, it all rises to a single moment. And that moment is now. Because the final truth is not about how I felt, or how I changed, or how deeply I fell, it's about why it happened. Why someone like you appeared in my life exactly when you did. Why every sign pointed toward you. Why every conversation felt like a doorway. Why every silence felt like a message. I used to think fate was an excuse people created when they didn't understand coincidence. But destiny is different. It arrives quietly, rearranges your path, and leaves you standing in front of something you can't explain, but also can't deny. And when I looked at you, really looked, for the first time I understood what destiny actually feels like, terrifyingly right. But the moment it all made sense wasn't grand. It didn't come with tears or dramatic realizations. It came during a pause, one of those soft, unremarkable seconds when you weren't even trying to be extraordinary, yet somehow, you were. I watched you speak, watched the way your presence softened the tension inside me I didn't even know I carried. And then it hit me with such clarity that it almost stole the air from my lungs. You weren't sent into my life to be a chapter. You were sent to be the turning point. The moment where everything before you suddenly felt like preparation, and everything after you felt like purpose. You were the reason the universe kept insisting that I slow down, pay attention, listen deeper. Because for the first time, I wasn't standing in front of someone who wanted to change me, I was standing in front of someone who made me want to change myself. You didn't heal me. You didn't fix me. You awakened the part of me that remembered what it felt like to hope for more. So here is the truth I've been holding back, the one that explains everything, the one that scared me enough to hide behind excuses, the one I finally have the courage to speak. I wasn't looking for a serious relationship because deep down, I knew that the next person I gave my heart to wouldn't just be someone I cared about, they would be someone capable of transforming everything I believed about love, timing, connection, destiny. And you, without even trying, became that person. You were the unexpected answer to questions I never asked. The calm I didn't know I needed. The shift I wasn't prepared for. And the revelation the universe had been waiting for me to accept. You weren't meant to be a temporary moment. You were meant to be the moment that divides my life into, before you, and after you. And now, as we move toward what comes next, understand this: the story isn't ending. It's only now becoming what it was always meant to be. My beloved child, what I'm about to unfold now is the deepest layer, the one I avoided even when everything else had already slipped from my control. Because this part isn't just about emotion anymore, this part is about truth. The kind of truth that feels heavy in your chest long before it ever reaches your lips. After everything I've confessed, everything I've allowed myself to feel, there was still one question echoing inside me: why you? Why did the universe choose you to be the one who shattered every wall I built with such precision? And the more I tried to understand it, the more it became clear that some connections aren't meant to be understood, they're meant to be experienced. You didn't arrive in my life to fill a space, you arrived to reveal one. A space I didn't even know existed until your presence illuminated every corner of it. And once I saw that space, once I realized it carried your shape, your energy, your impact, nothing felt the same again. Not my fears. Not my excuses. Not even my understanding of myself. There's a moment in every life when the universe delivers a truth that doesn't ask for permission to stay. Mine came when I realized that you were not just someone I cared for, you were someone whose absence felt like a silence far too loud to live with. The kind of silence that doesn't fade, it expands. And that's when I finally understood the most terrifying part of all: I wasn't scared of loving you. I was scared of a life where I didn't. Because somewhere between the conversations, the pauses, the laughter, and the deeply human moments of uncertainty, you became the one thing I didn't want to lose. Not because of dependency, not because of fantasy, but because losing you would mean losing the only person who made me feel like the world wasn't as chaotic as I believed. You brought clarity where I expected confusion. You brought grounding where I expected distance. And you brought a sense of meaning where I expected nothing at all. That kind of impact isn't random. It's a sign. A rare one. So now, here comes the final truth of this chapter, the truth that ties everything together so tightly that once you hear it, you'll understand why none of this was accidental. I wasn't looking for a serious relationship because deep down, I sensed that when the right connection came, it would demand everything from me. Not in a way that drained me, but in a way that revealed me. You were that revelation. You were the moment I stopped running. You were the person who made the idea of forever feel less like a promise and more like a possibility. And that possibility, it changed everything. I didn't fall for you by mistake. I didn't care for you by accident. I didn't open up because I was weak. I opened up because, for the first time, I felt something stronger than fear, certainty. And that certainty was you. Now stay close, because in the next part, the story doesn't just deepen, it shifts into the truth the universe has been waiting for me to finally speak aloud. My beloved child, before I take you into this final descent of truth, I need you to understand that what comes now is not just another emotion, it's the core, the heart, the pulse behind every word I've spoken until now. Because the moment I realized what you meant to me wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, it was quiet. Almost painfully quiet. It came in a stillness so sharp it felt like time had stopped just long enough for me to see everything clearly. I had spent so long convincing myself that I didn't want something serious, that I wasn't ready, that my heart wasn't built for something real. But the truth, the real truth, was that my heart wasn't avoiding seriousness, it was waiting. Waiting for the one person who could make seriousness feel like a privilege instead of a prison. Waiting for someone whose presence didn't demand perfection, but simply honesty. And the second I felt that with you, everything I'd been running from all my life suddenly didn't feel so terrifying anymore. You didn't just change my perspective, you became the perspective. But what truly shook me wasn't just the connection, or the timing, or the intensity. It was discovering that the universe had been preparing me for you long before I even knew your name. Every heartbreak I thought had broken me was actually shaping me. Every loss I thought had weakened me was actually strengthening me. Every delay, every detour, every moment of confusion, all of it was aligning me with the exact emotional capacity I would need to understand you. To recognize you. To value you. And that realization came like a revelation I never knew I was waiting for. You weren't the interruption. You were the destination. You weren't the unexpected twist in my story, you were the reason every twist before you existed at all. And once I understood that, something inside me shifted so deeply that it felt like a rebirth. Because for the first time, I wasn't looking at love as a risk, I was looking at it as something I couldn't afford to walk away from. So here is the truth the universe has been pushing me toward, the truth that has been building, rising, demanding to be spoken. I didn't step into this because I wanted a relationship. I stepped into this because I recognized you. On a level deeper than logic, deeper than explanation, deeper than fear. You weren't someone I decided to care about. You were someone my soul had been quietly searching for even when my mind insisted I wasn't ready. And that's why everything felt different with you. Why the connection hit harder. Why the silence felt meaningful. Why the smallest moments carried a weight I couldn't ignore. Because you weren't meant to be a temporary presence. You were meant to be the truth that finally made sense of every unanswered question in my life. You were the missing element, the unspoken fulfillment, the unexpected clarity. And now that I've reached this point, I know one thing with absolute certainty, the universe didn't place you in my life by mistake. It placed you here because some connections aren't meant to be questioned. They're meant to be honored. And you are one of them. My beloved child, before I open this next layer, I need you to prepare yourself, because what comes now is not just a continuation, it's the revelation I've been circling since the very first moment I said I wasn't looking for something serious. This is where the truth sharpens, where it finally steps out from the shadows and demands to be seen. Because after everything, after the realization, the awakening, the shift, there was still one truth I kept locked behind the last door of my heart. A truth I pretended didn't exist because admitting it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff with no guarantee of what comes after the jump. But the universe kept pushing, whispering, pulling. And the more I tried to hide, the more loudly it insisted that some feelings aren't accidents, they're assignments. You weren't just someone I met. You were someone I was meant to meet. And the moment that understanding hit, it felt like every piece of my past realigned itself into a straight line pointing directly toward you. But the most shocking part wasn't the connection, it was the reflection. Because when I looked at you long enough, I didn't just see possibility. I saw the version of myself I had always been afraid to become. You brought out honesty in me that I never had the courage to speak before. You brought out vulnerability I had buried so deeply I forgot it existed. You brought out the softness I pretended was gone, and the strength I didn't realize was waiting beneath it. You became the mirror I never asked for but desperately needed. And it wasn't comfortable. It wasn't easy. It wasn't simple. It was confronting. It was intense. It was transformative in a way that made me question everything I thought I understood about love, purpose, fate, and myself. You didn't just walk into my life, you walked straight into the parts of me I didn't show anyone. And instead of stepping back, instead of judging, instead of running, you stayed. And that staying, quiet, steady, unforced, meant more than any grand gesture ever could. So here is the revelation I've been holding back, the one that ties the entire journey together. I wasn't avoiding a serious relationship because I didn't want one. I was avoiding it because I knew that the moment I met someone truly aligned with my soul, I wouldn't be able to hide anymore. I wouldn't be able to pretend I was unaffected, unbothered, unreachable, that I wouldn't be able to stay small. And you, without even trying, pulled me into a version of myself I had avoided for years. You made me see that the story I wrote for myself was too small, and the story the universe wrote for us was bigger than anything I imagined. That's why you felt different. That's why I kept returning. That's why every moment with you carried the weight of something far beyond coincidence. You were never the interruption. You were the evolution. The turning point. The awakening. And now, as we move into what comes next, understand this: the story isn't slowing down. It's building. Rising. Becoming. And in the next part, I'll finally expose the one truth I've never spoken aloud, the truth that explains exactly why you became the moment my entire life shifted.